Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest Godzilla podcast. Well, it's week 3 in my Godzilla movie reviews, and this time I have seen the next film in the chronological order of the Godzilla franchise, and this having to do with Mothra versus Godzilla. And I must say, it's quite nice to see a very good movie after the hokey and corny and silly previous film, which was, of course, King Kong versus Godzilla. Quite a different change. I loved this movie, Mothra vs. Godzilla. It was absolutely wonderful, and it was great to see that a lot of the things that were in the original Gojira film are back within this film, including the serious tone, some good characterization, a decent storyline, and some good action. So, very, very good stuff to see. Now, interestingly enough, the movie apparently has several titles. Netflix, for example, has it as Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. The Thing, and then Mothra vs. Godzilla, and other places. So, for the sake of this case, I'm going to go with Mothra vs. Godzilla as the title, to ensure that there's some more commonality with regards to this film. Now, what makes this film so great, first off, is again, it harps on so many of the things within the Gojira film. For starters, there was the serious tone that was within the film right from the beginning, when you had those hurricane winds that were apparently producing a lot of havoc, a lot of havoc. And there was a build-up. This whole movie was all about build-up. Everything wasn't presented right away. Instead, you as an audience member got to know the action and the storyline and whatever else surprises were coming through right as the characters were as well. Case in point, there was, of course, the egg that came on board the beach, and I loved the way that the storyline, kept it building upon that. For starters, the egg was first discovered by, looks like, out in the sea by the villagers. The villagers were all excited to see it. Then the egg was discovered by a corporate head of some sort, who decided that, hey, this is going to be something that's going to be turned into a tourist attraction. Now, it sounds a little far-fetched, but it kind of makes sense. Whenever you have something like this happen, one of the first things that, that could occur with regards to what to do with such an object is commercialization, and ensure that it's the property of somebody so they can exploit it for money. And when that happened, then you had the egg being surrounded and being built around. There's that evil corporate head guy, the one who eventually was revealed to be the true mastermind of the egg being taken over, along with his puppet head figure. And then how they treated the villagers and how they treated others with regards to the egg, and how they were lying and ensuring that nobody was going to get any funds. It was some great stuff. They all built upon one each other, and it led ultimately to the culmination of the actions taken towards the egg, leading to the demise of the two evil corporate heads, both of them essentially canceling each other out, with the final corporate head, of course, not really facing Godzilla, but facing the actions of Godzilla and dying because of it. Speaking of Godzilla, it was interesting to see that with this film, much like in the original Gojira film, he doesn't appear till well into maybe the 45 minute mark or so. So here's another Godzilla franchise movie that essentially doesn't have Godzilla until late in the movie. And it shows, the testament with regards to how well this movie is made, because you don't even feel his loss up until that point. And I love the way that Godzilla was introduced within the film. You had the newspaper guy and his photographer assistant discover that weird-looking thing within the wreckage of the hurricane. And it was interesting to realize afterward that that's actually one of Godzilla's scales. And so much in the shock to surprise of everyone, including myself, it was nice to have that revelation later on, because one would never think that something like that would be tied to Godzilla up until later on in the film. I also love the way that Mothra was introduced with the two twins essentially coming about. Those two twins, by the way, made the film the most fantastical, fantasy part within the movie. That's the one where you kind of had to stretch your brain around to ensure that, yes, there truly is an island where these miniature twins can exist with their god Mothra. But when you accept that, you realize that it can work within the film. And with regards to Mothra, I loved her introduction after the twins were talking to the journalist and to, again, his photographer assistant, and they pointed out towards the forest, and as the camera peels back, all of a sudden you're revealed to Mothra in her grand glory. And what an iconic design. I mean, it's one of those designs that has stayed to this day. With any film, most recent ones that involve Mothra, the design hasn't changed hardly much. Goes to show how well the design works after all these years. I mean, this is a 1964 film, and we're talking over 40 years later, and the Mothra design is still the same. Godzilla, of course, has gone through many changes with regards to his looks, but in this case, Mothra has changed very little. So again, it goes to show to the iconic design that Mothra has. Also, what I loved within the film was the storyline. It almost played like as a soap opera of sorts. I wondered what was going to happen to the villagers, in this case, who were cheated out of their earnings by the evil corporate heads. And with regards to the military, once Godzilla came on board, they became a heavy influence, and the attack that the military had against Godzilla was another high point. They had several frontal attacks, again, the storyline that made sense. Again, you would want to attack Godzilla with electricity, as was within the original Gojira film. And I love that they paid homage to that, because if they went in an all new direction of some sort, with regards to other things, it would seem a little kooky. But in this case, the military was realistic, and they saw what success the electricity had within the characters of the original Gojira film, so why not use it again? So again, they tried to use the electrical compounds, those posts that were charging, and then afterwards they tried to use the actual nets that would conduct further electricity. And then at the very beginning, there was the American battle cruisers that were fighting with some kind of new bomb of some sort that was delivering some very powerful explosives. Very, very great stuff. And of course, the final action when Mothra finally came on board and started to attack Godzilla. I wish they hadn't used too much of the sped up camera scenes within those things. It would have been more impactful to just keep it at regular, but I guess they were trying to convey how quickly these monsters were fighting each other. But yeah, otherwise it was very, very nice. Also, this film, again, with regards to the storyline, you had the characters, the main ones, the journalists, and I guess the editor and the goofy guy, all coming up and trying to come up with a solution, with the military again just shooting first and asking a question later. Here these people realize that, hey, we could ask Mothra, and we could ask the little twin girls exactly what to do. So very, very good stuff there. What didn't work within the film, the only thing, it should have been explained better how, I guess, something like Mothra and something like that island exists all of a sudden within the context of the film. It seemed like it was too much, and I use that phrase again, but a little too much deus ex machina, where very conveniently here you have something along the lines of these island and the villagers and someone that asks for help when Godzilla is attacking left and right, and again, it just seemed a little bit too convenient. I think it would have been best to leave the entire island and the villagers out of the way, and that would have required probably having to remove those twin girls, who are still such iconic characters within the Godzilla franchise, and instead just have it be that this is Mothra, who is another kaiju that was a derivation of, let's say, the atomic testing, who had an egg, and that Godzilla found the egg, and Mothra was just trying to protect it. I think it should have just been kept that simple. But again, that's just my own opinion, because afterward, of course, the twins came back, the island and the villagers and the two Mothras afterward would come back, so they continued with the success and they kept it from there. Everything else seemed fine. I didn't really have any other issues with anything. The special effects were good for their time. They weren't as cheesy as the King Kong versus Godzilla effects. The Godzilla suit, it's still not my favorite. I don't know why they kept changing it from the original Gojira film, but I guess they were trying to make sure Toho was that this was more family friendly of sorts. Now, what really worked within the film that was so great was the actual ending. After Mothra was defeated, or not defeated, but dying in essence, and wasn't able to defeat Godzilla, then we finally had those two larvae, those two Mothras come out, and I truly felt for those little guys, because here we have Godzilla that was proven to be throughout the entire movie indestructible. You had so many outlets, from the military to Mothra, to various measures such as electricity, missiles, so many ways that Godzilla was trying to be defeated, not the least of which was Mothra's poison, considered the final weapon, and Godzilla wasn't defeated at all. And then you had these two totally exposed, non-flying, just slowly crawling around larvae that look to be the most vulnerable of everything, because if Godzilla would suddenly turn on one of these things and just start showing his fire breath left and right, unless they had that cover, I mean, they were toast. So I was truly feeling for the guys when they had to go to the island and take on Godzilla one-on-one, but I absolutely loved the covert action that those two little guys took. That was a pleasant surprise to watch within the film, because I kept thinking to myself, how is this going to make sense? How? I know that ultimately these two little guys will defeat Godzilla, but how, when you have them so exposed, they don't even have the tough protective skin, and just the tiniest bullets, the tiniest breath of anything, and they'll be essentially shot or burned or whatever. But here in this case, I love that the storyline took them where they decided to take covert action. They hid behind rocks. One of them went underneath a tunnel, and then they decided to do a left-right combo where one would attack, Godzilla would turn towards it, and then the other one would attack while Godzilla was distracted. And ultimately it just led to them defeating Godzilla with the simplest of things, which was their webbing that was coming out of their mouth. Great stuff, and it was, again, one of those underdog type stories that I love to see in regards to the movies, and to see this within the Mothra film and in this Godzilla film, it was really great to see. And it made sense, again, because if you trap Godzilla in that way, in some kind of webbing that's very, very hard for him to get out of, then he's ultimately going to be null and void. There's no way he won't be defeated per se, but he won't be able to attack. And of course it ended with Godzilla falling into the sea once again to, I guess, plunge to the bottom because he was not able to take himself out of the webbing, and ultimately left to where the next sequel comes about. The other thing that didn't make sense was Godzilla's own introduction. I had to look it up actually on Wikipedia, and the way they explained it, apparently the hurricane force winds, whatever happened at the beginning, essentially threw Godzilla or flew him or something over to the area where the movie first started, and it buried him at the same time. That I don't get, because someone can explain that to me, post it on the comments below. How can an entire village such as that not recognize something as large as Godzilla within the hurricane winds being thrown about, and not only being thrown about, but being buried by these things, unless some previous film established that he was buried there or something. But that's the only thing that didn't make sense. It was still pretty cool when he actually rose from the dirt and from the entrapment that he was in, and started doing his signature attacks, but otherwise that just seemed a little weird and out of place on there. So overall, out of 4 stars, I'd give this film 3.5. Very, very good film. Outstanding entry within the Godzilla franchise. Here's looking to the rest of the films standing as high as this mark. And as always, thank you so much everybody for watching my videos. Have a good day. Bye.